Hey, what is up, Algebros? This is Algebra 1 Lesson 2.5, solving equations involving absolute value. So the first thing we need to remember is, what is absolute value? And just a quick reminder here is, if we take the absolute value of some number a, this means the distance from 0 to that number. So if this is 0 and this is the number a, the distance between them is the absolute value. Now, if someone asked you how far where you live, you might say 10 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, but you wouldn't say -7 miles. Whenever we're talking about distance, it's always positive. So over here, if we have the absolute value of 3, we're talking about here's 0, here's 3, so that means it must be 1, 2, 3 steps away. So it is 3 steps away. Likewise, if we're taking the absolute value of a -3, here's 0, here's -3, it is also 1, 2, 3 steps away. So this is 3 steps away. Now, based on what we just said, notice the absolute value of 3 is 3. And the absolute value of -3 is also 3. So based on that, what values could I plug in here for x that would come out to be 3? Well, there's not just one value in this case. We actually have two different values. We could have either -3 or 3 as part of our solution set. So -3 and 3, those are my two answers that would make this equation true. So let's talk about solving absolute value equations. When we solve them, we kind of have two cases that we have to look at. First of all, this thing inside the absolute values could be either this number, so we could have something like this. The y plus 2 could equal to 4. But we also have a second case. If this number in here was a -4, it would still come out to be +4 because we're taking the absolute value of it. So my other option here is to say y plus 2 is equal to -4. So we kind of took what's inside and said it's equal to the positive version of this. What's inside is equal to the negative version of this over here. And now we have a simple 8th grade level math problem here that we can solve. We're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And we're going to get y plus 0, or just y, is equal to 4 minus 2, which is 2. If we subtract 2 over here, this is going to be y plus 0, or just y, is equal to, well, -4 minus 2 is going to be a -6. Those are the same sign. So notice now I have two answers that could make that true. I have both the -6 and the 2. So we'll put those in those fancy brackets, so that's my solution set. Now if you kind of want to just check that, let's see if that works out. Hey, what is the absolute value of 2 plus 2? Using this as my answer. Well, the absolute value of 2 plus 2 is going to be the absolute value of 4, which comes out to be 4. Hey, that works. Likewise, what is -6? The absolute value of -6 plus 2? Well, that's going to be the absolute value of -4, which is, 4. Well, that works out as well. So both of those answers do indeed work. Now let's look at a word problem here that talks about error. Now, error is something that happens in life. Not necessarily error of getting something wrong, but just the fact that it's hard to keep something at exactly a certain temperature or get something exactly a certain length. And so there's some kind of margin of error that's okay, that we can deal with. And so some things require less margin of error, some things you can have more margin for error. So now this problem here is talking about one of my favorite things, ice cream. Should be stored at 5 degrees Fahrenheit with allowance for 5 degrees. For allowance for 5 degrees, that means that it can either go up 5 degrees from there or down 5 degrees from there. So it says write and solve an equation to find the maximum and minimum temperatures at which ice cream should be stored. So if you keep ice cream, you want to set your freezer to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you open the freezer, the temperature is going to rise a little bit. Maybe if it stays, or if the freezer gets in a cold room, maybe the temperature is going to go down a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to let T represent the temperature of the ice cream. The temperature of the ice cream. And so we're going to say T. And so we're talking about the distance between T and 5 degrees should be less than 5. Okay, so my allowance, let me see if I can do a highlight here. This allowance right here is this number right here. Okay, and I'm going to take the absolute value of that, the distance of that needs to be 5. Okay, now this one right here is this one right here. They use the same for both of those. And the same number for both of those made it a little bit confusing. Alright, so now we need to go through and solve this. So remember, we have two cases. We have case 1, where this T minus 5 is actually just equal to 5. Or we have case 2, where that T minus 5 is equal to a negative 5. Again, because if a negative 5 got put in here, it'd still come out to be 5. Or if this was 5, it'd still come out to be 5. So now let's go through and solve. I'm going to add 5 to both sides here. Negative 5 plus 5, that's 0. So I have T is equal to 5 plus 5 is 10. Over here, if I add 5 and add 5, negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So I have T plus 0, or just simply T. And then negative 5 plus 5, well, that's 0 as well. So 0. So the minimum temperature should be 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll put minimum here. And the maximum should be 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Based on this. All right. All right, now just one more thing that we wanted to point out is that this absolute value, this is guide practice number 2B, by the way. Absolute value, remember, when we're talking about the absolute value of something, we're always talking about a distance, and the distance is always positive. And so this one here says the absolute value of 3n minus 4 is equal to negative 1. So what we're asking is, what number could I plug in here, plug into an absolute value that gives me out a negative 1? Well, hang on. We just said that the absolute value always produces a positive number. However, this is equal to a negative number. So this is actually impossible. No matter what number I plug in here, whatever number this comes out to be, this absolute value is going to make it a positive number. So I can make this come out to be 1, but it's impossible for this to come out to be negative 1 because the absolute values always make it positive. So for this one, we actually, there's two different ways to write it. The easiest way is this, a circle with a line through it, meaning the empty set. Another way to write that would be my solution set with absolutely nothing in it. Okay, so if your absolute value is equal to a negative number, then you say, oh, there's no solutions to this. Your homework is on page 110. You can do 14 through 36 even, and then do 66 through 68 all. Good luck, guys. You're going to do awesome.